Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Lemongrass Roots, where we talk about all things SAP. Obviously, we're in Sapphire season, SAP's main conference, and today I'm delighted to have our very own head of global alliances, Henrik Wagner. So, Henrik, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Eamonn. Very happy to be on, and yeah, it's been a fun, busy time heading both to Orlando and Madrid, and looking forward to catching up about that right now.
Awesome. So I was in Sapphire, Orlando with you, but didn't make it to Madrid. So really keen to hear about how they compare. But let's start maybe at the highest level first. What was the buzz like? What was the atmosphere like? How did you feel today or this year compared to last year, and how the two events compare to each other?
Yeah, no, I think Sapphire Orlando definitely was an event that had a ton of momentum from a client and interaction perspective. It feels kind of like Sapphire is fully back from what it used to be pre-pandemic. During the pandemic, I think they were trying to figure out what the identity of the conference would be, number of clients, partner interaction, number of people there. But this Sapphire Orlando event, I think a lot of things came together. SAP has a lot of momentum with their messaging and their strategy that's starting to really resonate. And lots of client interactions and feedback from clients about where SAP is heading, including the meetings that we had with a lot of clients. So I think overall takeaway from Orlando was fantastic, that SAP is doing a good job, and as well as Lemongrass, we had a great experience.
But one of the things that I noticed, and it was the same last year, which I thought was a real strong thing, was the balance between the number of customers, number of partners, the number of SAP staff. It really made for, it almost felt like there was enough time to meet people and get
Yep.
around the people you wanted to see. Was that the same in Orlando and Madrid, did you feel?
Yeah, no, I think they, like I said, they've hit the right balance in Orlando. Madrid, the previous year, we all went to SAP Sapphire in Barcelona. The layout of that conference center is not as conducive for meetings and customer interactions, but the Madrid setup it was really nice. The way the halls were laid out and the meeting rooms, and, lots more clients. My observation as well in Madrid than last year in Barcelona. Lots more customers on the keynote stage, and certainly more customer meetings that we were part of. And just the vibe of the city, Madrid is just really cool. I mean, very, very local, great food, great environment. So I think it was a good positive change for them to make a change there.
And you mentioned the SAP's message. I mean, this is certainly one thing that we saw back in San Diego in the SAP kickoff or GDM. Do you want to kind of summarize the headlines of that message? Because I think I was getting texts from customers saying they liked it. And people who maybe were sometimes a little more skeptical about some of the marketing from SAP, they really seemed to get it. What was your sense? And what is that message, if you want to summarize it?
Yeah, I think it's spot on, because if you look back a couple of years, sometimes you feel like these keynotes were like this strategy, and they do a demo, and it's so far disconnected from the reality that customers sitting out today. And they're saying, how do I go from the mess I'm in today to that kind of shiny toy and that future and that demo SaaS environment? I think today the way they're laying out the strategy with this flywheel approach with applications, the data layer, and business AI, how they're pulling that together and providing a bridge to customers to go to RISE or Cloud ERP with RISE, which then fits into the longer term to get to complete business suite strategy with all the applications pulling together, or for new clients or the smaller clients, just grow the SaaS version that they're starting out with. I think that vision is starting to make sense, and it's coming at a really good time where customers are already started their S4 journey, or they're in the middle of their S4 journey, and they're starting to realize that getting to kind of a clean core, getting to clean up their landscape, having a stronger enterprise architecture foundation, and moving in the direction of SAP makes sense now. And I think doing it at a time where SAP has a more clear strategy just it makes a ton of sense. The other piece that comes with that is this tool chain, I think, which is a really strong message that's resonating with the clients. So we started hearing about it at Sapphire Orlando last year, and you've heard more and more about it. And this is obviously SAP's ability to put the items like CloudALM, LeanIX, Signavio, now WalkMe from user adoption, the SAP toolchain to kind of simplify the amount of tools to drive better automation and simplicity in the landscape, and then also adding the partner tool chains with Synergy for data, Tricentis obviously for testing, and OpenText for the content management component, and kind of recommending this set of technologies that all better integrate together, that helps drive better integration and automation for clients. So it enables clients to move forward in a way to get kind of much faster to an end goal. That's kind of what I've seen and very impressed. There's the big piece obviously about BDC, but what's your take on kind of that strategy and what you've seen and customer adopting it?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think, feedback directly from customers was that they felt it was on point. And as I mentioned, it's funny because, over the last 20, 30 years, often customers have grown a little skeptical of the marketing message. But I think where SAP are starting to do, which I really like, is talk about the non-SAP and the SAP coming together more. And we see that with BDC. Customers already have got Databricks, for example. Okay, so you don't have to throw it away. You can integrate that into the bigger picture, and mix SAP data with that. So I think that's a real breakthrough. I can start to see now why SAP made such a big deal of that announcement, because the reaction from customers has actually been very positive. And of course, what everybody wants to get to is AI. That's the whole clamor at the minute. And my kind of view on what SAP did at Sapphire was to double down on that message as well, that this is coming, it's coming quickly. Yeah, there were a bunch more use cases that were being announced. But what I like is, and we kind of all predict this, there was going to be a bit of a rush to this, but over time we start to see some very useful use cases starting to pop up. Indeed, one of our customers was talking about some of that capability that they saw, and was only going to be available through RISE. And they began to realize that their recent decision to move RISE now suddenly made sense, that would give them access to this capability they wanted for their industry. So, and to some extent, because the message was even consistent between San Diego in January and Sapphire in May, might not seem like a long time, but in the world of SAP, that's quite a long time to keep a consistent message. I felt that was very positive too, that this actually does make sense and it's going to start delivering. So yeah, I agree. I think that the consistency of the message, the clarity of the message, is worth everybody listening should be spending a bit of time making sure they can get their head around that, because it is it's going to give you a good roadmap as to what's coming next. And where you should be basically pointing your strategy towards.
I think another big observation I had from Orlando, a little bit in this, there's no question that large enterprise organization, this segment of, whether it's Fortune 100 or Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, they're adopting this strategy. They're adopting Cloud ERP, they're adopting S4. They may not be, they've started the strategy, or they're in the middle of the strategy, or they're in the middle of executing it. But I feel a little bit the last couple of years when they're talking about some of the new technologies, S4 or RISE at the time, that they put a customer on the stage and it's a large enterprise, and they say everybody's gone there now. And it didn't feel like a real message 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Whereas now you look at the logos, you look at the customers, and you look at the customers that we have, that we're engaged with, and their projects that they have, RISE, and how they're getting towards clean core, and how message around this flywheel and the tool chain, driving automation, getting to this business AI, how that's really resonating and kind of simplifying that. So that huge observation for me, that the it's not a question of if now for these large enterprise organization. It's how do I get there, or how do I accelerate getting to this kind of future state where I can adopt business AI and have greater insights and be more flexible and move faster as an organization.
No, totally. And I think, it sort of, I felt what really encouraged me about it was how that lines up to what we've been saying in the last 6 to 18 months, and what we're doing from a services point of view, to help customers along that journey. I spent a bit of time with our Clean Core AI solution, and pretty much everyone I showed it to was excited about it and was intrigued by it. I know that RISE migrations is something we're seeing a lot of. What did you think? Where did you see the most sort of reaction between what we have been trying to help customers with and what they were asking for during Sapphire?
Well, two areas there. Like, one is the observation about like previous year, especially last year. I mean, we have lots of customer interaction. We're fortunate to have a lot of big clients, and we had those meetings, and it was us having those meetings around where are they at in this journey and how do we help them. To this past Sapphire in Orlando, I mean, let's say it was 20 or 25 large customers meetings. 9 out of 10 of those meetings were in the SAP meeting center together with a bunch of SAP executive or the SAP account team, and we're aligning ourselves. The customer is aligning to move faster towards SAP strategy around Clean Core, Cloud ERP, obviously getting to Business Suite, taking advantage of Business AI, and we're helping customers remove obstacles and working with SAP to kind of accelerate that strategy, whether that's doing an advisory engagement to understand where the customer is at right now, where they're trying to go to, how to make sure we have the right operational model in place, what the right migration strategy is, or like you said, the assessments that we're doing around this Clean Core advisory engagement. I felt the same way. Every client we're bringing that up to, they're asking for help. They know they need to go there, and they're looking for simple solutions where somebody can kind of help them in an incremental step with a couple months. What I think there's a lot of fatigue around, which we're hearing from clients and from SAP, is this alternative approach that says, sure, Clean Core, that's 5 years and X million, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's kind of an unknown. Am I really solving a problem? What am I getting? Versus, getting more tangible steps. So that was, really, really well received. And same in Madrid, when we present our ability to very quickly understand where customers are at and what help them move there, including our proposition around the Clean Core advisory kind of assessment. It resonates extremely well, and then it aligns with SAP strategy.
Yeah, and that's always encouraging. I think when customer aligns to SAP and we align to SAP and the customer, it gives you a good feeling, I guess, which is exciting. One of the other topics, which I know we chatted about a bit as well, that sort of maybe didn't just pop up, but certainly got a lot more coverage, was around sovereign cloud. Where did you see that, and what sort of messages were you hearing about that?
Well, I think in Orlando, obviously, a lot of global companies headquartered in the U.S. Global companies are understanding what the global regulations, tariffs, global trade and so forth means for them, and the impact that makes. And if there are changes in the landscape of regulations, how important it is to be agile. I think the quote, I can't remember if it was Thomas Sauersig or Christian Klein, said, agility is not an option, it's survival. And I think they're right. Getting towards Clean Core, getting to an environment where I'm fully automated to be able to move quickly. In Madrid, in Europe, you have this GDPR, you have this data regulatory requirements, and we're hearing from various clients, depending where they're headquartered, where they operate in Europe, different regulations between those countries, how they're operating globally out of Europe, and the things they have to deal with. I think there's a huge opportunity, and this is where we're starting to see a lot more from SAP around this sovereign cloud, and dealing with in-country, cloud capabilities that meets those regulatory requirements for those clients, whatever they are in those countries. So I think that we're going to see a lot about that over the next couple of years, and be exciting time for both us and SAP with those clients.
In fact, I think we even saw after Sapphire some announcements from the hyperscalers saying that they're further investing. AWS talked about new parent company in Europe, etc. So this seems to be gathering a lot of steam, certainly in Europe, and obviously with the global situation. Have you heard any customers specifically say to you that this is something they want to move towards, or is this still kind of with the usual suspects around governments and public bodies?
Well, there was some unique clients that we met with in Madrid that are our current clients that are looking at their roadmap and where they especially, some of them have already gone to the cloud provider, AWS, Azure, and Google. Some of them already gone to cloud ERP, RISE, and some of them are understanding like, okay, what does that future architecture looks like? What is my regulatory requirements, compliance, and so forth? So do I require, even though I'm in maybe an industry where traditionally I wouldn't have thought that I'd have to be in some kind of regulatory type environment, where that starts to make sense now, or people are investigating it. And that's where, like you said, where AWS and others are building out offerings. I think we'll see a lot more from SAP to understand. I think that there was an announcement that they did around the sovereign cloud solution, around particularly for Germany, for a set of industries, and would be plenty more to come on this topic.
And again, one other topic as well, I guess, that SAP, I guess, increased the volume on, as it were, was the whole message of AI first, suite first, but this idea that Business Suite is back. Business Suite is reborn to incorporate
recycle this terminology, right? It's exactly. Acronym bingo all over again.
Yeah. But it's for those of us been around for a while, it's a matter of updating our lexicon, I suppose. But again, that seems to be very important to SAP. Why is this such a big thing for SAP, and why do they think customers need to be paying attention to that?
Well, I think in long term, in the future, to get to fully take advantage of business AI and insights, you got to get toward kind of a SaaS operating experience, and SaaS, and again, this is where the flywheel comes in with, application layer, the data, and business AI. Now, most clients realize they can't turn off and turn on the SaaS. It's a full-fledged migration. So the question then becomes, okay, well, what if I have these industry solutions or line of business cloud solutions that are SaaS, right? My Concur, my Fieldglass, my all the other components of SAP's landscape, they're not SaaS. Now I'm getting to cloud ERP, who's more of a, I would say, almost like a PaaS solution. Okay. Then I get towards clean core, and I start aligning with SAP's more industry solutions, and get rid of my customizations. Now I have an opportunity to, over time, to be able to execute this business suite strategy of being in a landscape where it's fully integrated, it's fully kind of visible data across the landscape. It's much easier to execute the business AI or AI use cases across all my applications, my data, and that again, I think that comes back to this flywheel effect. What it really kind of brings back is I always thought over the last 5 years or 10 years, like, are these customers that are SAP first or SAP only? Sure, there's a subset of it. Then there's a large amount of clients that use a lot of SAP technologies, but then they use a lot of technologies from other companies as well. And I think what I've felt a little bit with this strategy this year, and with Orlando, specifically in Orlando, is I think SAP has a lot of momentum getting towards customers selecting kind of SAP first, getting into this strategy, maybe not all the way to SAP only in their business application landscape, but certainly more so than 3-4 years ago, where we heard a lot of customers started kind of picking apart what they're using from SAP from an application perspective or not. What's your thoughts and take on this area?
Yeah, and I mean, again, I think it's everything you said is spot on. I think as well, I remember back in the day when SAP R3 came out, and part of the reason it was successful, incredibly dominant in the 90s was this idea of an integrated data model, an
Yep.
integrated experience. And
Yeah.
what I also saw kind of slightly more under the cover was the SAP graph. So this technical abstraction of all of these SaaS products, so basically an API layer,
Mhm.
upon which you've now got BTP for extensions, work zones for UI, as you say, Joule and AI running across all of that layer. So what I can see happening next is that the experience becomes much more integrated, as you said, much better integration than what we saw in the past, even with the
Yep.
attempts of, interface files bunching back and forward. This becomes a much more user experience, integrated user experience. So I think what I can start to see now is that coming back, which again is something I know that customers loved back in the day. Was one of the big wins, was the integrated nature. Um,
Yep.
so I'm excited to see how far they get with that. But this idea of having Business Suite as a way not just to market but also purchase the entire
Yep.
stack. Now you can begin to buy not just the application, but the data and the AI in one unit together, and then have an integrated experience across them all. Yeah, I really see that's quite big thinking from SAP. Again, that resonates with customers. They love seeing that SAP is trying to get ahead of what the current demand is and make sure there's something for them in the next step.
Do you remember when Christian Klein, the current CEO, first took over as CEO? I think it was a keynote, is it 6, 7 years ago? That was
Yeah,
pre-pandemic. And he got on the
yeah,
stage. It might be when he was just CEO or just gotten to be co-CEO with John Morgan. And I'll never forget that. And he kind of, I mean, this is during the time that Bill McDermott had acquired a lot of these SaaS solutions, a lot of these kind of separate companies. And I remember Christian talking about this. He said, like, we need to focus on integration through our acquisitions, and we got to have a better experience from our client instead of all these point solutions. And he kept going on and on about it. And I think at the time he wasn't maybe the best, speaker on the keynote stage. And he'd come a tremendous long way from a business acumen. But it went from 6, 7 years ago to like almost, I'm having an integration challenge across this various tool sets and companies that SAP has gone and acquired, to now this integrated message and this integrated model to really take advantage of AI and
Mhm.
leveraging Joule across the stack. So I think they've come a long way. I think he
Oh,
even mentioned it, that's one of the keynotes that I thought he said something like, we are 25, 30,000 engineers. This is what they've been hard at work at the last year or two. And having an integrated experience and getting out to outcomes and getting to the right, being able to ask the right questions and get the right answers from the application. So yeah, it was pretty impressive
yeah.
if you think back from that time.
That's a great observation, and I think he was right. I think his statements were right, and maybe misunderstood at the time, but that's what's being delivered right now. Is exactly
Yeah.
that, getting back to that integration solution. A couple of things before we wrap up, Henrik. So I suppose before we wrap up, you are an SAP mentor, have been for quite a while. You get the inside track. Like, I know you're under NDA, et cetera, but any goodies, anything you want to flag up before we start to wrap up here?
Yeah, the SAP Mentor community is very cool, vibrant. It's about 40, 50 of us around the world, some customers, some partners, influencer community. I've been a part of it since 2017. Most of them are really technical, kind of very smart developer background, and now strategy roles, founders of companies, a lot of BTP skills. Brian, obviously, Dennett from our BTP practice, also a mentor over the last 5 years. We are very fortunate to sit down with a lot of the executives during these conferences. We get free passes to the conferences, and to sit with the CTO, Philip Herzig, and Walter Sun, the head of AI, to get the insight and get the kind of feedback and what they're seeing. They're asking us about what's resonating on the keynote stage. We met with Thomas Sarsig and his team, the folks in the support organizations, and a lot of these various leaders. I think it's very insightful that they're humble and that they're looking for feedback. They're looking for insights. Of course, they're probably asking lots of things from their clients and partners in individual meeting, but this is kind of a cross-functional group, and they're extremely interested to spending the time with the mentor community and then taking the feedback and actually doing something about it to improve year by year. So no, it's a really cool experience, and you know, I would say the biggest takeaway is like that the executives, board members are coming to these meetings. There's like 7 or 8 of us in the room at Sapphire. Not all mentors go to all conferences, right? And they're looking for feedback. They're asking questions. They're taking feedback. They're writing down, and they bring. It's funny. They usually bring 2 or 3 chief of staffs, and the chief of staffs taking lots of notes. But then they get back to us. They summarize it, and then the following meeting, whether it's a virtual meeting or the next conference, they usually, you know, give an update on here's how we implemented changes or on some of the feedback you've actually given. So very, very, very cool experience.
That's really cool. Okay, and then just wrapping up, in terms of anyone listening, maybe who weren't there, or maybe people didn't see everything, what should they do next? Is there somewhere they can go to get a debrief online, or what would you advise them to look at?
Yeah, I mean, one other area we didn't speak about is SAP's come a long way in their with their community, as well as with their whole experience around their learning hub. So I mean, I would, you know, there's a very interesting time right now with the strategy and execution of SAP and the customer. So I would really double down on taking classes and understand and getting certified and getting kind of, you know, the whole BTP messaging, the solution space there, the whole piece around AI, the huge opportunity. There's certainly other great blogs out there of summaries of Sapphire, but I would just recommend being active in the community. Go on the community sites and write blogs, read blogs, you know, engage. We're certainly very interested as a partner to SAP and to our customers to help customers engage and you know, understand how we can help solve them problems based on kind of where SAP is at in their strategy, which we obviously learned from at Sapphire. Other last takeaway, I mean, I gotta tell you, I mean, also in the last year or two, especially in these 2 Sapphires, again, very positive vibe, you know, from SAP, positive energy. I think they did a pretty good job with you know, the celebration events, but just like the tone of the keynotes, it's more humble, it's more real. I felt like 10 years ago they would put some customer on saying, oh, they use XYZ technology, but then you look under the covers, most of us, you know, maybe a little business unit was using such and so technology, whereas today it's, you know, it's a pretty impressive. They have a lot of momentum. It was a very impressive events. I'm very excited about the other events coming up. You know, I think there's Tech Connect, obviously, later in the US. There's the SAP Tech in Berlin. I'm excited for where SAP is heading for the rest of 2025 and going into 2026.
Awesome. Henrik, look, thanks so much for taking the time out of your very busy day to come and chat to me for 30 minutes or so, and to everyone listening. And to all those listening, if you have any questions, any feedback, please reach out. And until we speak next time, thanks for your time and goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.